Welcome, everybody. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Hammond.
Here.
Vice President Daley.
Here.
Trustee Clements.
Here.
Trustee Headland.
Here.
Trustee Parr.
Here.
Okay, I'd like to welcome you all here. We have a full house tonight. I like this. We should have this more often. I just want to remind everyone that the next Board of Ed meeting will be held on April 2nd, 7 p.m. here in the band room. Dr. Bernante?
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. We're entering the part of the school year where obviously it's a very busy time, and we spend a lot of time as a district talking about the school budget, but this is also the time of the school year where we begin to realize the culmination of many years of service to our students. And I'm proud tonight to introduce Joshua Lisikatos, who's one of our students and also attends the BOCES program, and Dr. Jim Ryan, who's the superintendent of the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. And Joshua is being recognized by the BOCES this evening, and with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Ryan to introduce Joshua and his recognition this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Benante. First of all, it's a pleasure to join you this evening in a series of selections that we have during the course of the year, the Student of Distinction. We have over 1,200 students that could qualify for this recognition, and I get around our supervisory district each day and visit all our districts. It's always a pleasure for me to visit Haldane. Joshua has done some great things in our Career and Technical Education Center. He's chosen a field that I'm sure is going to give him great reward, and I'm going to ask our principal, Mr. Jim Bellucci, to step up and talk a little bit about Josh and his outstanding accomplishments in the Tech Center, but also the fact that we're really talking about a fine young man. And as a resident of Cold Spring personally, I really am so gratified to see how he's grown up into a fine young gentleman, and he's going to do great things, not only as an academic, but as a professional as he gets into the field of his choice. So, Jim, would you join me?
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. And Josh, why don't you join me up here? Your time in the sunlight here. As a principal at the Tech Center, there's, as Dr. Ryan said, 1,200 students. So if you do some quick math, we honor or acknowledge 10 students per year. So you're looking at, if you ever wonder what it looks like, the top, or better than the top 1% of people, performers, Josh is one of them. So that comes from hard work and dedication. And from day one, I remember him coming to the Tech Center with a big smile on his face, excited to be there, and the flowers just kept blooming. He's worked hard. The welding teacher is an engineer as well, and he is duly impressed. He couldn't be here tonight, but he said Josh just takes anything on and goes at it with a smile on his face, passion, and a love for what he does. It's hard work, it's loud work, but that class is always busy. The kids really go in there and do a great job, and he leads the charge. He really puts the wind in the sails of the other students and the teacher. So they're all duly impressed. But it's not only his welding skill, it's the attitude, just a great kid, his folks and his family. Wherever you are, you should be so proud. I know you were part of it, but he's earned this today. So I'd like to thank you so much for being a student at the Tech Center, and thank Haldane for sharing.
Okay, I have a proclamation to read for Joshua, and I'm going to ask Dr. Benante to come forward, if he would, and help me with this. Present the medal. Let me see what I wrote here, Josh. I'm not really sure. Student of Distinction, February 2019. This certificate is awarded to Joshua Lisikatos in recognition for your outstanding leadership skills, academic progress, and community spirit. And really underscore the academic progress and community spirit and the challenge of the field that he's chosen. He's going to do great things, and you've really had a great experience at our Career and Technical Education Center, and we just want to congratulate you with this award. Yes, certainly.
Parents, yes. Don't mind. In the middle, Josh.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Very nice. You're very, very welcome. Just want to say I'm also joined by our Assistant Superintendent, John McCarthy. He does great work with us on our campus, and the work that we do with students like Josh is really a pleasure for us. But he's really an excellent example of the great things that happen on our Career and Tech campus in Yorktown. Congratulations, Josh.
Congratulations, Josh. And thank you to all our friends from Putnam, North and Westchester BOCES for joining us this evening.
Congratulations, Josh. Good to see you. Congratulations.
Bye. Thanks, Jim. Take care.
And the audience begins to.
There
Okay,
we go.
yeah.
Lost half our
But
crowd.
we still have good number here.
Yeah.
I guess we're going to be moving on to the special presentation.
Yes. Just one more comment. I
Sure.
should have mentioned this to Josh's family. And Josh, I had met some months ago when he was on campus here. And I came to this point, or I'm coming to this point with my own son, where he's 11. And we're trying to talk about what it means to show up and how you present yourself and your body language and your presence. And when I first met Josh, I just was reminded of this. Such a good first impression he made. One, he has a good handshake when you all met him, because I remember shaking his hand. And I said, how are you? How are you doing today? And he says, I'm doing very well, sir. And it's not often you have a student address you as sir. That's very formal, of course, and I'm certainly not promoting that, but just made such a positive impression on me when I first met him when I came on campus. So we're all very proud of him. With that, I'll turn it over now to Dr. Silke, and as Dr. Silke is coming up, and we'll move out of the way, just a reminder to the board that each of our building principals will be presenting a detailed report over the course of this school year. So Dr. Silke is next, and just some of the parameters that I said I would mention at the beginning and not at the end that we gave to Dr. Silke, which was to provide a brief overview of some things, an initiative or two that are occurring in the school. Try to keep that presentation to between 10 and 15 minutes to allow for plenty of time for questions and answers from our board members. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Silke, and I will get out of the way.
Thank you, Dr. Benante, and thank you for the board for the opportunity to present in a little bit more detail just some of the good work that's going on at the middle school. And before I go any further, I'd just like to introduce some of the middle school representation that we have here tonight. So if you could just stand when I introduce you so that folks could see who you are. Mark Wick, our 6th grade science teacher. Sarah Grom, our 6th grade special educator. Kim McCullum, our 6th grade ELA teacher and our liaison for the humanities department. Heidi Gessen, our 7th grade team leader and science teacher. Tom Vergidamo, our 6th grade math teacher and our liaison for math and science. Jumping to up here, Ryan McConville, our 8th grade team leader and social studies teacher. And in the back, David Doherty, our 8th grade ELA teacher. And then on the other side, we have some of our student leadership. So we have Matt Janjulis, who's our 8th grade, one of our 8th grade student leaders, and accompanied by his mom. And Matt Nachampkin, one of our 7th grade student leaders, accompanied by his mom, Andrew's little brother. So thank you all for coming out and supporting the middle school presentation, the middle school work. It's a good opportunity for the board to put name to face. And I was telling some of the teachers that I highlight the work that goes on in the middle school in monthly board reports. So it's nice for the opportunity to see each other in the flesh. So tonight, the presentation tonight is to go over some of our goals, and just as a general overview, as you may already know, Haldane Middle School is a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade school with small class sizes. Team teaching is at the heart of our approach. It allows us to have an interdisciplinary focus, as each team has a math teacher, a science teacher, an English teacher, a social studies teacher, and a special educator attached to it. So our teachers are always looking for opportunities to create authentic projects together and have an interdisciplinary focus. The focus is on student-centered teaching and learning so that the experience is authentic. So one of the goals that I'm going to talk about tonight, and these goals are aligned to Dr. Benante's district goals, is the goal to nurture a collaborative and lively community of professional learners at Haldane Middle School and support deeper learning experiences. So in education today, information is readily available. Teachers are no longer the gatekeepers for information, and simple content and information is easily accessible on the internet. So the focus, in order to be timely in our teaching, the focus has to shift from the teaching of content to the teaching of skills. So this goal speaks to the goal of the work at Haldane Middle School for finding opportunities for students to develop and practice the skills required to access the information that can be readily found on the internet and in other sources. And to not just access that information, but to be able to analyze it, to be able to work together and collaborate, communicate ideas, to do critical thinking and problem solving together, and to be creative in those processes. So this is just a visual of what I was explaining before with interdisciplinary projects. So since the teams have the opportunity to work together and do planning together, they have team time, the teams are always looking for opportunities for crossover. And this, in fact, approximates real life, because in real life, we oftentimes need to use multiple skills from multiple areas to come at a project or a problem in our practices in real life. So having an interdisciplinary focus is preparing our students for the work that is to come in their lives. We also have a project-based focus, and the projects of 2019 are not the projects of even 2009. Things have changed a lot. Whereas when I went to school, learning was oftentimes teacher delivered. It was linear. There were teacher delivered lessons and then checks for understanding via quizzes that were summative and formal exams. And then maybe there was a project, if you were lucky, and it was a standalone project related to the learning, but produced after the learning occurred. The learning that students at Haldane Middle School are doing looks much like the project-based learning model on the bottom, where the content is embedded in the project. So the project is not a standalone item at the end. The project is the learning, and the teacher acts as facilitator, checking in at different points and providing different experiences to have interaction between the students, so that the students can have interaction with the content throughout the development of the project. So it's the process, not the outcome, that really is the learning piece of the project. So I just want to give you some examples. These are just a snidbit, because I just picked one project from each grade. There's actually so many great ones that are going on. So from the 6th grade, this was an interdisciplinary project with social studies and ELA, readers theater. So I'm sure Kim could speak much more eloquently to all of the little pieces that would make up that bottom line. But in general, what happened was the kids read several different scripts about figures in Greek mythology. They had Hudson Valley Shakespeare group come in and talk to them about delivering their reading with mood and tone and intention and intonation. They created their outfits for Readers Theater and decorated, and then they presented their Readers Theater. So that was a great experience for them. A 7th grade project, and there's so many going on, but 7th grade project, the Gene Saunders History Contest allows for students in social studies to go into in-depth research that is facilitated by the teacher, but really spearheaded by the students based on their choice of project. They collaborate, they choose who they want to work with, and there's a real world aspect to it in the sense that it culminates in a contest that's not a derived contest through the school, but an actual real contest. The 8th grade immigration project, I feel like I spoke ad nauseum about this to you guys, but I'm going to highlight it again. The 8th grade project actually incorporated all of the disciplines. So there was a piece from each of the disciplines. And what you're seeing here is Ryan McConville's class, where a research piece of the work, part of the project was the creation of a presentation, which was then shared with the class. So this was students working on that. In David's ELA class, the students wrote letters to their congressman or the politician of their choice on discussing what they had learned about immigration and sharing with that real politician what they would like to see happen. And it was very exciting every morning as David would pick up the mail, because responses were coming back to the kids, and the kids getting to see, those responses from the politician that they had written to. In science, the students studied American scientists who had immigrated here, and discussed what it would be like if those scientists had not had the opportunity to come to America and work in America. And in math, the students graphed the ebb and flow of immigration over the years and pondered what were the push-pull forces that caused those changes over time in immigration. So again, just a sampling of the work. So the second area of work that I'd like to highlight is the goal to support the development of a universal social emotional learning curriculum for the middle school. So social emotional and emotional learning is at the heart of all of these pieces that really, if a student has relationship skills, self-awareness, self-management skills, if they're able to make responsible decisions, and if they have a social awareness supported by their families, their classrooms, their schools, and their community, they're really going to be able to access and practice those skills that I was speaking about before, the ability to collaborate, the ability to share ideas and think critically. If a student is struggling in any of these areas, they're less likely to be able to access what it is that we're asking them to learn, especially if it's skill-based, because it's asking them to perform. So performance indicators, you have to be feeling good, and you have to be coming in a good spot in order to perform well. So I just want to tell you as briefly as possible the story of how we came to this goal, because this is truly a collaborative goal. In January, late January of last year, the Middle School Instructional Council convened to discuss what direction the middle school wanted to go in terms of initiatives and goals. And very quickly, we all agreed that we wanted to continue with the deeper learning that is aligned with our current strategic plan. And then another thing bubbled up. And the other thing that bubbled up was the desire to update our current character education and social emotional learning program so that it would be universally delivered and And to see that happen, one of the first things that the group did was just have an increased awareness of what was out there in terms of programs. And the programs that bubbled to the top were positive behavior interventions and supports, and Yale's Ruler, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So we started to look into other schools that use positive behavior interventions and supports. Garrison just rolled out theirs this year. This is a research-based program that is underpinned by the idea that collaboratively a set of expectations are developed in a school setting, and then those expectations are taught in context, explicitly taught in context, and then they are reinforced with acknowledgement, and they become the common language by which we come to understand who we are. So who we are as Haldane Middle School. So that's where the student leaders came in. So at the tail end of last school year, the Middle School Instructional Council asked the teams to bring forward students who not only were leaders but also had a reach into many different groups in the grade. And we reached out to the 5th grade teachers as well for incoming 6th grade students. And we identified student liaisons for each of the grades. And in September, the team leaders and the students attended a principals, advisors, and leaders conference at BOCES. And I was so proud to say that we were the only middle school there. So I feel like the importance of preparing leaders, we were harnessing that in having our middle school there with high school students and working and practicing the skills of collaboration and critical thinking with those high school students. And then empowered from that experience, we've been meeting regularly to develop a school motto. So our school motto is Haldane Middle School is True Blue, and TRUE is an acronym. And we also collaborated to decide what the acronym TRUE would stand for. So the student leaders, they came up with a survey and they polled the student body to see what the student body wanted that acronym to stand for in terms of the characteristics that would be the embodiment of who the Haldane Middle School student is, or what the Haldane Middle School student does. So the T is teamwork, the R is for responsibility, the U is for understanding, and the E is for excellence. So we're at the stage of the rollout where this month in the faculty meeting, the team leaders and I presented to the faculty the essential elements of PBIS, and we'll take our April and May faculty meetings to discuss the remainder of the rollout. We also, toward the end of the school year, will begin to educate the parents and the community about positive behavior interventions and supports. And we will roll out with our lessons and our acknowledgement system next September. We're very excited about it, and to see that come to fruition and all of the work that goes into it from the teachers, the students, the administration, and I'm excited for the parents and community to begin their involvement as well. So I'm going to ask Sarah to come up and talk about Ruler, since Sarah has been delivering the instruction about Ruler to our faculty through after-school staff development.
The other component of our SEL program, the social emotional learning, that we felt we needed was the Ruler program, which is a program from Yale, and where the PBIS talks more about the behavior and character. This really helps our students with the emotional needs and building their emotional intelligence, which is it's just amazing for them to have this knowledge about themselves and their emotions in middle school and then just for life. So this is one component of the Ruler model, which is called the mood meter. And it allows the students to work on recognizing how they're feeling. Yale's slogan is you have to name it to tame it. So if they're able to pinpoint what it is that they're feeling, they can decide then if that's a good feeling for the moment that they're in and if they would want to stay there or shift. And then the Ruler program also works with them on understanding what they might do to shift and kind of developing those regulation strategies so that they have them. The other component that would kick off this school year would be the charter, which would be done in classrooms. And the charter is similar to classroom rules, but it takes it a step further and asks the students to think about how they want to feel while they're in that classroom. And if they're not feeling that way, what needs to be done to rectify the situation. So, and giving them strategies again for that. And then the third component, which is kind of my favorite, is it's called the meta moment. And it asks the students to think about the best version of themselves and to know what that looks like to both to themselves and to like people, their friends, relatives, outsiders. So when they are faced with a situation that tests them, they're supposed to stop and take a breath and envision their best self. And that's the moment where they're going to kind of make sure they come back with a reaction that's going to really make sure that it's the best version of themselves showing up in that moment. So those are 3 great strategies that we'll probably be focusing on next year. And then there's a fourth one that kind of is more of a tier 2 strategy that helps students when they kind of have escalated to a situation that needs to be worked out between 2 people. But those are the main components.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And as I said, Sarah has been offering after-school staff development on the components of Ruler throughout this school year. So does anybody from middle school have anything they want to add before I turn it over for questions? Anything? Thank you. Questions?
Sure, I'll ask you a question. First, thank you. And beware, I'm going to ask you guys a question too, so start thinking. So as you move from, as teaching has moved from content to skill, assessment changes as well. Can you talk a little bit about how assessment is changing and how you think about it, and also how you communicate that to students? So it's not just the test at the end and what you give back is how you're being assessed or what you're here to learn, but it's the process along.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with Jeff Sniffen recently because he utilizes a lot of interim assessments, rubric-based assessments, self-assessments, peer assessments, and I asked him, so how's it going? Like, how are the kids accepting it and adapting to this, very different type of assessment? And he told me that because we've been working this way at Haldane for several years now, his current students, they're used to this type of assessment. So he said that in the beginning, the first year of the strategic plan, it was very foreign for our students to self-reflect. It was very foreign for them to give peer feedback, and that he's seeing the fruit of what's going on at the elementary level, because the 6th grade students currently, it's not as foreign to them. And then, on the big picture, we've been having a lot of conversations in the region about what assessments should look like, and how there's a disconnect between the fact that we know that best practices are all of these authentic learning pieces, and yet still, like when you get to high school, you have these very standardized tests that are the measure of success, our regions, our APs. So there's a lot of chatter and a lot of talk in the region about how to ameliorate that rub so that we can move forward and not have that disconnect. So I think there's going to be lots more to come in the field of education on that in the next few years.
Cool. Ready? All right, either one of you can step up and answer the question. So the question is, if True Blue rolls out really well next year, what do you think will be the best impacts of them? They're like you. No, you. You nominate Matthew?
But they're both Matthew.
Come on, one of you's got to do it. You're going to come and you're going to be a student leader. Step on up.
You guys could come up together if you want.
Yeah.
You can come up together.
It's also a hard question. Can they have one round of another question to think about it?
Yeah, what do you think would be the best thing that could come out of like the social emotional learning, the stuff that you're doing with True Blue? What would be the thing that you would want to see? Yeah, oh yeah.
We're trying to get kids to interact more,
Yeah.
and with the True Blue, it allows the students to interact more and also do more work in class together.
Yeah.
As we were talking about with Mr. Sniffen, how the kids kind of grade each other and they give each other feedback. So if True Blue works out and if we're able to implement it next year, or if it shows next year, then I feel that the best positive will come from it is kids being able to interact with each other and give each other that feedback so they can improve their work.
Great, thank you. You have to say something. You can't just walk up there. What do you think?
I would just say that, yeah, I hope it goes on through the next few years, and I feel like it would make everybody like communicate well together, and it would help throughout the middle school and just keep everybody bonding, and yeah.
Great. That's a great answer. Thank you very much.
Any, go ahead.
So I remember when my son went from middle school to high school, the big joke was, that, the transition was you walk up and down the hill. It's not a big transition where in so many districts, the transition from one grade level to another is really challenging, but it's still a real transition. And so I'm wondering whether you all, what processes you have in place, or what your thinking is about, in addition to the social emotional learning, which I think is probably a big piece of it, to help students make that transition, like, the change in sort of focus and expectations and just the daily living of being a high school student.
That's a great question. Thank you. And it's something that Julie and I have been working on. And I think that our conversations spawned the fact that for the first time, 8th grade parents were invited to the high school orientation from our school, because in the past it had been a presentation geared toward Garrison parents with the kind of the thought that our parents know our school, because, after all, it's just a transition. It's just a walk up the hill. And I recognize that because I know when I talk with my kids about heart, which takes place up in the high school, like, kids are afraid to 7th and 8th graders are afraid to walk up to the high school because they've just never done it before. They don't have, it's not, so it's the fear of the unknown. Like, what if I go up there and I don't know what room to go in, or what if I walk into the room and there's nobody that I know? So one of the things Lisa Kahn, our new school counselor, has been doing is offering to walk kids up there and introduce them to the high school faculty that's running Heart for that day. So small things like that. At the Frost Valley trip, we have Scott Manny, who's the high school social worker, come and spends the entire trip with the 8th graders, so he gets to really know them at Frost Valley. And last year, Ms. Sniffen came for a day as well. So we try to take advantage of overlap. We do transition meetings, so that there can be some communication between the teachers. And I think that there, as Ms. Sniffen and I, this is year 2, right? So as Ms. Sniffen and I work together more, I think that our brains will percolate all kinds of new ideas that will be opportunities for moving forward. As Andrew cracks his knuckles, yeah. So there's work to be done, so.
That was coincidental. I think the ideas sound great.
Yeah. No, thanks very much.
Marianne, can you talk a little bit about, I hear that you say that ruler is something that you guys have been working on throughout the year. PBIS is something that's being implemented. Can you talk about the success of the program? Have you seen any success? How do you know if it's successful? Like, how's it going?
So the program hasn't rolled out yet.
Okay.
So, well, PBIS hasn't rolled out yet.
Okay.
So the rollout is September. So this time next year, I hope to be telling you exactly how it's going. And one of the nice things about PBIS, although it's not exactly what we would focus on here at Haldane because it's not really a huge area of concern for us, but the way the program is set up is the data gathering component of it is discipline data. So as part of our work toward that, we've been collecting and analyzing the discipline data from this year. So an example of that is, cell phone infractions. So once students are explicitly taught that being responsible in the hallway is not checking your phone at your locker, but rather gathering your stuff quickly and getting to class, for example. Once two students are explicitly taught that, the idea is that there'll be less hallway infractions of students using their cell phones in between classes. So that's just an example. So that's how PBIS is set up for one of their measures, one of the measures.
That makes sense, yeah.
So in terms of Ruler had actually been introduced in the district, I believe the year before last. Yeah. And however, it had not become embedded in the culture and it had not saturated the middle school. So when the middle school instructional council was looking at social emotional learning programs, the question to whether or not to revitalize Ruler came up. And, the group loved the aspect of Ruler that is self-regulating. So, PBIS has a lot of direct, explicit instruction on the teaching of behavioral expectations and kind of how to commune and be in community. Whereas Ruler is much more self-regulatory. So I think that it's a nice marriage, having the language around both. And it gives teachers language to talk with kids about feelings because, the research shows that in general, students do not have a wide vocabulary of emotions, which can be why sometimes if you ever experience asking your child, how are you doing? And they say, fine. And no matter what expression they have, so one day they're angry and you ask them how they're doing, they say fine. The next day they're really happy, by their body language, but you ask them how they're doing, they say fine. They're not trying to be cheeky. There really is not a wide vocabulary around feelings and emotions. Whereas, teaching students about their feelings and about the mood meter and the different aspects of happy or energized, different aspects of angry, the different aspects of sad, right? That gives kids more words to express how they're feeling. And it gives adults a common language around that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Silke. I know this question may not be directly intended for you, but maybe we have some people who can help us. The Ruler, I know the program was originally taught 2 years ago at Yale, or was it through BOCES? It was at Yale. Okay. Okay. Are we continuing, or was that the only training that we gave our staff, or are we continuing the Ruler program?
So I had conversations with Dr. Benante, conversations with the Middle School Instructional Council and Sarah about the Ruler training, because last year I was asked to attend a Ruler training at BOCES, and it was derivative. I found it not impactful for me, and Sarah is very enmeshed in the work and felt very confident that she could do she could turnkey the training for the faculty, and she's done that, and I think she's done that very well. So in terms of whether or not we would send another cohort to Yale, that isn't written into our rollout plan. If at some point in the future Mark Brackett came to BOCES or somewhere locally, I think that would be a conversation with Dr. Benante, and we would attempt to send a number of people to that, because he to just hear it straight from the developer of the program, and as a great refresher for Sarah, and a revitalization for the trainer gets retrained as well. I don't know if that directly answers what you.
Yes, thank you. I'm just losing pieces of where we were with the staff, elementary through high school. I know it was introduced. I'm not sure if, I guess what I'm getting at is all the staff trained on Ruler.
And that's a good question. So the answer is no, not all the staff. But that's why this is a really good reason to have periodic reports from our school, so you can ask questions like that. So thank you for your question, first of all, because I think that it reiterates the point of having, of checking in with our building leadership and our faculty periodically throughout the year, and enables you to have that perspective and kind of hold us gently accountable. Accountable is a strong word in that regard, but I think it's appropriate. And then the Ruler piece is really unique, because we were a bit ahead of the curve in the region when we initially started to engage in our work there, or in our work with the Ruler program. And now, as BOCES has brought Yale really to the region, as opposed to us having to send folks out to Yale, it's enabled a lot of educators in the region to become more familiar with the program and to utilize it in their classroom settings. And the benefit of having now a district curriculum council is that, as a staff, we can review these programs periodically, do a status check. Where are we? What's going well? What are we struggling with? What may we need to prioritize in terms of training, or should we abandon this? And it allows us to have a K-12 conversation about that. And if there is a need in training, for example, it enables me to then come before the board, perhaps with staff, and describe what the need is, and how we're incorporating that into our budget and our planning for the upcoming school year. So that's all good information that I think you would want from the administration or from our staff as we're deliberating on what to include in the educational plan and budget for the upcoming school year. So there's a nice tie to, so it's a really good question. It's a nice tie to District Goal 1 about the importance of creating a system and a structure for reviewing curriculum and other programs that may be in place in the school system. It's going to take us a little while to get going with that, but I think we feel good about the fact that we actually have something in place in a space where we can come together to have those types of conversations, and then part of this process and report back to the board periodically for how it's going.
And I would just add to that because it's part of our middle school initiative, all of the middle school, I made one of the hours of the after-school staff development mandatory. So all of the middle school has had the introductory training. And then Sarah offered several follow-up trainings that were well-attended. And I would say that I sat and they were well-attended by K-12. So there were high school people there, there were elementary people there, and there were middle school people there.
Great.
So there's an interest still, K-12.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay. Thank you,
Marianne.
Dr. Silky.
Thanks to your team for coming.
Yes, and thank you to the middle school staff and our student representatives.
Matt.
Thank you. Appreciate coming out this evening. Okay. Did we miss committee?
No, I think we
Oh.
covered it. I don't have any further comments. I do have a few comments throughout the agenda that I'll make.
Sure.
But with that, I think we can transition to information reports. if that's
Okay,
with you.
great.
Yep.
Moving on to information reports. These are here for our viewing. And let's see. Oh, sorry. No,
Nope.
these are these reports. We'll start with Andrew.
All right. Hi, everyone. So earlier today, actually, we had a professor from UAlbany come to give a small talk at lunch on the history of immigration in America. We had about 45 students attend from all 4 grades. They asked a couple questions to him afterward, what it was like to be a professor, immigration-related questions, career-related questions. So we'd like to thank the History Club and some of the teachers in the Humanities Department for that. And then additionally, Haldane just did its high school production of Cabaret. It was a massive success. We sold out 2 nights. It was great to see people from the community, parents, teachers, and students all really enjoyed the show. So thank you all for coming to that.
You were a massive success.
Well, thank you.
Yes, congratulations, Andrew. Well done.
Thank you very much.
All,
We're all very proud of
to
you.
all students.
Did a great job, yes, and all of our
Thank you.
kids. A question about that, because cabaret can be a bit of a controversial production.
Absolutely.
There's some very mature themes that are embedded within it, and I've talked to a few of the students who are involved in the production about that. And many who expressed an appreciation for being allowed to do the play, which is kind of funny. But I'm just curious, what was your perspective having been a part of the production, and what are your thoughts now that it's done, and
Yeah.
the
So going in,
performance
I
has been
was really nervous because I wasn't sure which version we were doing. This was also before I knew which role I was doing. But after reading through the script many times, then starting to do it with props, with accents, with music, and then eventually with the orchestra and costumes, and doing it at full speed, I really gained a new appreciation for it. And I think my parents can tell you this, just especially with the theme of Nazism. When you're doing scenes once every week, you don't really get an appreciation, but when you do the whole show in 2 hours, you really get to see how it builds throughout the show and how the subtle references become explicit references. And I think that's a really important message today in the world of how quickly things can happen and how quickly things can change. And so I really think that the show's a good example of that.
Great.
Thank you. Andrew.
I cut you off in your report. I didn't know if there was anything
Oh, no,
else.
that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Mr. Wallach is not here this evening. He was excused from the evening, but he did provide an overview for the board's reference, and I'll just highlight a few things. I know Mr. Wallach wanted to share that our grade 2 students recently finished their biography projects, and actually I think there's still some pictures on our website from a couple of years ago of students who were part of this project, much like the Reader's Theater performance at 6th grade. That's become part of a tradition here at Haldane Elementary Schools. Our kindergarten teachers are in the midst of planning for next school year, so we've been conducting visits to area preschools as we're getting ready for next school year. It's gone by very quickly, but we're getting to know our incoming kindergarten students better, which will allow us to better place students next school year. And the elementary school talent show is scheduled for Friday, March 29th at 6 p.m. For all those who are interested in attending. And lastly, this is not just specific to the elementary report, but the middle school as well. Parent-teacher conferences are scheduled for this month, and we did make a transition from what I believe was historically 2 days of conferences to 1 day of conferences. And myself, Mr. Wallach, Ms. Sniffen, and Dr. Silke had the opportunity. Actually, Dr. Silke was at a conference, so Ms. Sniffen and I and Mr. Wallach had an opportunity to talk to the PTA a little bit about this, that even though conferences have been reduced, we only have one formal day, at any point, if a parent would like to request a conference with our teachers, they certainly can do so. This is not meant to get in the way of that. Granted, we're in some ways trying to prioritize instructional time with kids, but there is time built in to the day where our parents can meet with our teachers if they have any questions or any concerns about student progress in school. So we just want to reiterate that, given that it was reduced and that was noticed among some of our families in the community.
Dr. Benante, I just had a question about that. Was that so? The reduction was so because you felt like there was too much time being taken for them, that you wanted more time in the classroom with the.
I think this was a decision made last year, if I'm not mistaken, on moving from 2 days of conferences down to 1 day as they were scheduled for this year. But as I've talked to others about it and what drove that, there was a feeling that the 2 days weren't fully utilized. So again, anytime we're closing school, we're losing time with kids. So feeling that 1 day was appropriate, but that the school was in a position to accommodate other families as if they wanted to schedule a conference as well that exceeded if we were full on it on the day that's already been designated.
And I assume that you'll note after this round if it
Correct.
didn't work out,
Right.
if
Yep.
people couldn't get in
Correct.
or people felt pushed aside,
Yes.
that you would revisit.
Sure, and if for any
the
reason that
issue.
is the case, I would encourage folks to call the building principal now if they feel like they can't get in or
Right.
pushed aside in any way, because there should be no reason why, if a family wants to meet and discuss their child's progress at this point in the school year, there should be no reason why they can't.
I'll just share that my son's elementary school teacher sent out a Google Doc
Yeah.
to fill in for which conference time slot you wanted to take. which I just thought was very,
Yeah.
Tech forward.
very tech forward.
Yeah. Okay. Something in the PTA was great about providing us with some feedback about the different forms sign up seems to take, and could we move towards more of a consistent process? So, and
I thought it was great.
We
I don't-
heard
I don't know if
that,
that was
so
across the
we're
board or
sitting
not,
with that
but-
right now. We'll work with our staff on that for next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure it goes without my asking to, as we make these transitions to these, especially technology-based methods, the recognition that technology fluency isn't necessarily something that all families have or access to technology, and so I assume that there are efforts to reach out to those folks.
Yes.
Thanks. I always worry when we move to technology,
Understood.
because there's real economic diversity in this community, even though we don't think about it always. So,
You are correct.
but you guys are always thinking of it. So, thanks.
Dr. Silke, do you have anything additional that you'd like to add? I guess that's a yes.
Just really quick, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Jeff Sniffen and the debate team for their good showing up at Bard for the competition. I won't go through the whole the whole detail report, but overall Haldane Middle School teams finished 11-4 in their contests and claimed 4 of the top 5 debate team spots and had 7 debaters finish in the top 10. So we really cleaned up, which was great. The middle school orientation was last week and on the 14th and was very well attended. And I thank the 6th grade team again for always welcoming the incoming 5th grade families and really explaining to them what their children are going to experience in the transition and soothing that transition over. So from 5th to 6th is another transition. Tomorrow we have Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival coming in to perform Julius Caesar for the middle school. So we're really excited about that. And again, thank you to the PTA and to Jeff Sniffen for arranging that. And that's it.
Great. Thank you.
Can I just say the debate team that's a really, really, really big deal that they won as many awards as they did. And it is a fairly new program. What is it, 3 years old? Mr. Sniffen has taken this from 0 to 100 in 3 years flat. And that is a huge, huge accomplishment. So they should be very, very proud of themselves.
Agreed. Thank you. Mrs. Sniffen?
Thank you. I have some big news. Again, in the spirit of celebrating, every year around this time, the area superintendents send out their invitation for dinner honoring our valedictorian and our salutatorian. I am pleased to announce that today I had the pleasure of speaking with Angela Fee, who will be our valedictorian this year, and speaking with her parents, who are incredibly proud, as they should be. Our salutatorian is Andrew Solhavi. And Adam, Adam. I did it twice already today. That is his brother. 6 times, he says. But and congratulations to him as well in regards to being our salutatorian. So we will be going down to dinner to honor them on May 22nd with area high school principals and superintendents. And they have the option now to apply for additional scholarship through being honored as the salutatorian and valedictorian. In addition to that, I'd like to mention to all families and students in grade 8 through 11, we sent out course request sheets. If you didn't get them today, you'll be getting them tomorrow in your English classes. If students could review that with their parents and then sign off on it. If there are any questions or concerns, if you could note it on the form and send it back, and then we will reach out to you if we have any questions. That way we can really get a head start on building our master schedule. And next week is high school trip week. Our sophomores are in Washington, D.C. Our seniors are in New Orleans. And on Friday, our juniors will have the ability to take part in the Sydney Safe Driving Program through Putnam County. So we look forward to a very busy week and maybe, hopefully, quiet next week. So thank you.
Hey, just a quick question before you go. Sorry. What I noticed in your report, the ELA audit. What is that, and what does it look like, and what does it do?
So this year, We, as a school district, under Dr. Benante's guidance, participated in an internal audit using an external company to audit the ELA program. We did it at all 3 buildings.
Okay.
And the principals took a lot of time to reflect on practices, current practices in place. In addition, we had 14 classroom visits with outside consultant to kind of review different practices within the classrooms. There was a student survey, a staff survey as well, to gather some feedback and data. So we received back some of those initial reports last week, and we took some time with building leadership to review those. And then on Superintendent's Conference Day, dove even a little deeper in regards to celebrating some of the great work that's going on and taking a look at some of the areas of focus and trying to establish different strategies that we could implement within our classroom to address some of those areas that were recommendations from the audit.
Is it mostly teaching practice as opposed to curriculum?
It's mostly teaching practices, but there's definitely both. You know, there's the alignment of the standards, ensuring that what's being taught is aligning with the standards in terms of what was being observed. But also instructional practices as it relates to differentiation, as it relates to co-teaching practices, as it relates to informal assessing within the lessons.
Yep.
So it really does hit both.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Julie, you may have mentioned it. I just may not have heard it. I was making a note to myself about something else. That your staff sat, your English staff sat with the results of that audit on Superintendent's Conference Day.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the time they had together at that time to review the
Yeah,
audit.
it was great too, because not only did they get to do it just the high school, which I took part in just the high school piece, but you can't split your body in so many places. I know Kim went up and they evaluated the middle school and the high school together to start some of those conversations in regards to the vertical and looking at similarities and differences. And again, I wasn't in the room, so I don't feel comfortable speaking about their findings, but.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Salm?
Good evening, everyone. Just a couple quick announcements. Just 7th and 8th grade parents today should have received another email from me reminding them to register for modified spring sports. Our first official day of practices and tryouts are next Monday, so if you have not registered your child, please do so. If you have any questions, please call my office or email me. I'd be happy to help you register. And then second, I just wanted to thank all of our student athletes, our coaches, and our parents for being so flexible the last few weeks. The first couple weeks of the spring season are always difficult. Practices change depending on fields, whether it be sharing the gyms, sharing the turf. Everyone's kind of doing the best they can just to get practices in so that we have enough practices to qualify for games. So the schedule kind of changes on occasion, even daily. So thank you again for being so flexible and working with us. Now that the weather's starting to get nicer, we should get to our fields and should have more of a norm moving forward. But the first few weeks can be a little hectic. So I just wanted to thank everyone because it is difficult at times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions about that? No?
You're off the hook. Mr. Botros?
Good evening, everyone. I have 4 brief points to make. Project scoping activities continue in support of the capital projects referendum, and preliminary design discussions are ongoing. The previously approved project to renovate the student bathrooms in the elementary school has been advertised, and the bid opening is scheduled for this Thursday, March 21st. We had a pre-bid walkthrough on March 7th, and staff and outside service providers have identified needed upgrades to the existing building univents, and installation will be implemented in the next 2 months. These improvements will eliminate noisy intake fans in various classrooms and help address temperature issues. On that note, we're just looking to make whatever small improvements we can make using in-house staff and small purchases, really to capture the low-hanging fruit before we plan capital projects to address any other HVAC issues that can't be tackled in-house. And staff continue to be responsive to building temperature issues and identifying needed system repairs and/or adjustments. Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick? Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
You may have the same question I have.
I was just going to ask if you could, or or Anne, or both of you, could you refresh for me the timeline? I know that you just said that the bids for the elementary school
It was-
bathroom project are out. Could you just talk me through what happens next?
Sure. So we're going to have the bid opening on Thursday. Hopefully we have a responsible low bidder. And then with your approval, the award will be made for the contractor to begin work. It'll be scheduled during the summer. Every summer we have activities going on in the school with camps and whatnot, but this shouldn't be impacted, in terms of the bathroom project. It's going to be off in the elementary wing. So we're going to have a separate construction entrance and clearly separate, the activities of the contractor with the use of the building throughout the summer.
Great. Looking forward to it. Was that your question?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any communication from the public at this time? Sure.
Hello. I think most of you know me, but if you don't, my name is Laura O'Connell. I just wanted to actually just make a statement. I just wanted to say that I think I was here literally a year ago. And I just want to say thank you to the board. I think in this last year, you guys have done some wonderful work. And really thank you to Dr. Bonante for coming. I've only heard really wonderful things. But really here to say that I heard that Laura Hammond's not running for re-election. Very disappointed. I think that your leadership has just been stellar for the board. But it does open up a seat, and so I'm here to say that I'm going to submit my name for that seat, and we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Okay, I know all of you folks probably want to scatter, and Dr. Benante is probably giving me an evil eye right now, but you can feel free to
No
go.
evil eyes are being given. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good night. Good job, Matthew. Good night.
Good night, Mr. Wick.
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Graham.
Thank
Good
you.
night, Mr.
Night.
Virgidava.
Thank you.
Care.
Good night, Matt.
Good job, Matthew.
You don't have to go, but
You're
you
my
can.
ride home.
We're
The
gonna
next-
be quick.
The next part usually doesn't take long, Mr. Captain, so
I know.
No. You can.
you can stay.
The more the merrier. We just sometimes our staff, they have a really long day, so
They
we
have to get
try
up early.
accommodate that. Okay, moving on to consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Yes. Actually,
Okay.
we should have kept Chris.
Oh,
Oh, you're right. We should have.
Chris.
We're just on the
I'm
minutes.
sorry, Ms.
so-
Parr.
I didn't know we had a question.
It's fine. I think I can handle Ms. Parr's initial questions while Mr. Salem walks back.
Mr. Salem's already at his car.
Yeah.
He ran out of
He's like,
here.
"I'm out."
For starter, kinda like-
I'm surprised he's still awake.
Okay, here's my question. How can you decide your valedictorian salutatorian now? How's that work?
It's also when they all get into college.
I mean,
Everything
we
is
actually
kind of
have
done.
It's as of
A particular time.
a particular date.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've
It's
asked
for
a
the
lot of
first
questions
semester.
about this.
You're like- you're like-
Check all the
It's,
place.
I think, sophomore year, junior year, and then the first 2 quarters of senior year.
Got it.
It's first semester.
All right.
And so, because I think 5-week notices for Q3 were just this last Friday,
Got it.
it's just enough time to get
Got
past
it.
Q2.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Salem. The police officer had come.
Did you have to get in your car? Mr. Shelters, you have to.
Bad joke. Full
Chris,
disclaimer.
we're
That's the
actually not-
first time a police officer. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay, we're on committee minutes here. And
Consent agenda minutes.
Consent
Consent
agenda.
agenda.
And
So 1 minute,
Ms.
Chris.
Parr
Do you have
has
a question about the
questions.
minutes, or you have a consent about this?
Not about the minutes, about.
Okay, so
Fine.
we're on
Oh,
minutes.
oh, okay, so we're on minutes. Can we
Let's get
get
that
a,
approved.
can we just motion this? We
I
motioned
motion.
and second.
There's a motion and a second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Why don't we just skip to that part so we can
to let Chris go?
Well, that's next. Consent
That's
agenda
next.
financial.
Consent agenda financial.
In discussion, so.
May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion, comments, questions?
So, I know we had this discussion last year, and I can't find it in the minutes, but I don't know if I'm even searching for the right words. But last year we had this discussion about if someone is going to donate something to one of the sports, that, and I don't remember, so I had a brief conversation with Laura, I had a brief conversation with Jen. So the concern was that we didn't want any of the sports, number one, to be singled out as the sport that was getting more stuff, that we wanted to equalize it amongst sports, and that we never wanted any, and this is not specific to this particular thing that we're, and I don't want to imply that under any circumstances, but the concern was that if something was being donated to a particular sport, that would those parents, families, or children be somehow indebted to that person, and it would look improper. That was one concern. One concern was that if different sports come off as being more expensive for kids to participate in a public school, we don't want any child to feel like they can't participate because they don't have enough money or the family doesn't have enough money. That all being said, I don't remember where we left it off on the high end of acceptance. I remember we left it off on the low end of acceptance of don't bother me if you're gonna donate 2 packages of plastic spoons to the event. The board doesn't need to approve that. And I think we left it at like $100. But there was a high-end concern, and I know it came up when the football dummy came in, but I don't remember where we left off, and I couldn't find it.
And I honestly think we didn't come to a conclusion, and that's why we can't find it. I was having conversation with Jen also. I think what I was recollecting is that as long as we knew about it, there were instances where donations were made where the Board of Education wasn't even informed that
Right.
a donation had been made. That was past practice.
Right.
I think this was done properly. We were made aware that a donation was being made. I couldn't remember a specific dollar amount. I remembered having the conversation about
Right.
let's not get into the minutiae of the little items where they were being donated through the Booster Club and it was processed that way accordingly. I have no recollection beyond that.
Neither do I, but I guess my question is, where are we in the process? Like, do we have these things in hand? Like, are these at the school?
Not at the moment, no. And once the donation would be accepted,
Right.
then they would be obtained by the school district.
Right.
We're not currently
right.
using these right now.
I mean, I think maybe we do need to, and maybe it's something for this summer, but the board is genuinely concerned about the amount of family money that goes to sports. And yes, this is a donation, and we don't know if it's from a family member, but the board is strongly committed to making sure that all children feel equally enfranchised and believe that they all have equitable access, and there's not a lot of expectations that family money is being spent. And then to see a big donation like this actually goes counter to that particular concern. Now then, at the same time, clearly this donation is made out of goodwill, concern for children's health and safety. I like to believe actually that the district is already making sure that our children are safe, and that we don't need to be relying on really very big ticket donation items. So I'm sounding a little upset because it is this thing that we have talked about for years. And so now I guess the ball is really in the board's court to come up with policies about this, because clearly we have not, right? So that is our concern. I mean, and so if we don't really have this and we are truly really approving this before it's in the district's hands, then I mean, they've certainly followed the policy that we have in place.
I actually have zero concern about this.
Oh.
at all. I don't think that this
Oh, then
kind of.
excuse me for speaking on behalf of the board.
I think that a donation like this is like super generous, super fantastic. I think big fat thank you, and I don't see it as concerning. I feel like we put in place a donation protocol because of concerns that came up. We didn't want donations happening behind closed doors, under the table. We wanted it to be everybody to be upfront about it, so there was accountability for the board to know about it. I feel like we put that policy in place. I feel like this is following that policy that we put in place. So I don't agree that we don't have a policy. I think we do have a policy. I think the policy is being followed. I don't think that this in any way reflects that the district isn't providing equal opportunity for all students who want to participate in sports to participate in sports.
No, I didn't say that, but I think we've talked quite a bit about wanting to avoid.
I mean, we could talk about this ad nauseum to every program. Like, they just had a fundraiser for the arts program, so we could actually talk about that.
But it wasn't a donation specific to
one particular team.
show.
It wasn't, I'll give you a set and my kid's going to star.
Right. But I don't know if that's really happening.
I'm not sure that's happening, but I would I agree that it's great for parents and community members to be able to contribute to support the activities at the school that they think are valuable, whether their students participate in not. I agree it's a big, fat, generous thank you to them. I do share the concern of I want to make sure that there's no possibility of a quid pro quo happen. I don't know where that sits in the policy or the process.
I don't think we have no idea, first of all, who the donator is.
True.
It could be somebody,
right?
So I don't think we should lean on assumptions.
I think that, well, I think that's where the
I'm not
administration.
assuming anything. I'm just making. I would want to make sure that the process is cognizant of that.
And I think the procedure that was established accounts for that to make sure that the donations are being reviewed, that there's that it's all on the up and up, if you will. And Mr. Salem reviewed this particular donation. Then he also reviewed it with me to make sure that the procedure was appropriately followed, and then it's presented to the board for action tonight. I think certainly, as Peggy noted, if it's something that requires further discussion about the process, because I think it's a good problem to have when folks are willing to commit their to commit money to the school in some way, and while it may be lacrosse gear tonight, I wouldn't be surprised if down the road it's someone who's saying, well, I want to donate money to the school for this specific use, and we should, and I would certainly want to be able to entertain that. But before we get into it, we probably should have further discussion about the process when we have the space and the time to make sure that whenever someone does or indicates that they have an interest in donating money to the school or donating a specific resource to the school, that it's in accordance with what the board policy and procedure reflects.
I don't think it's, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I don't think it's any different than the item right before this where there's been a donation for books to the elementary library. The amount is different. I agree with that. However, the concept is the same.
Different in the sense that it is, the elementary library will affect all elementary school students. This will affect X amount of players.
But I think that that's the donator's prerogative. I think if we were to tell a donator, you have to donate to all teams or you have to donate in a general fund, they wouldn't be as interested in donating. I think if somebody's passionate about a certain sport, whether they're passionate because their kid plays it or they're just passionate because they used to play it. I mean, I don't think it matters. Like if that's what they're passionate about and they want to donate to that specific sport, I think they should be able to.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
That's
I
the way
think
the
our
world
big
still is.
concern was that we were not being informed of donations on many different levels, not
And
just sports.
There were shirts that were given with kids' names on the back. So it wasn't a donation to the team. It wasn't a donation to this particular team that would last forever. It was a donation to this particular team that was here right now, whatever, and all these kids were required to wear these shirts.
But I think we've come a long way in the process.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yes.
Mr. Son.
No, that's
I
okay.
think we've come a long
Yeah.
way.
I was wondering why I was here.
Sorry.
That's okay. Go on. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of quiet
Yeah.
when everybody's here, but
So
as soon as
I
I get
think-
my head on something.
No, it's okay. So I think to speak on Margaret's point is we've cleaned up a lot of that, and like Dr. Bernardi is saying, we're trying to do this correctly, and if we accept this donation, it's being used for all the kids in the lacrosse program, most likely for the next 5 to 8 years. That's usually a life frame for the items being donated. So even if that individual did have a child or children, it would go past their length of their career anyway. So it is a genuinely good thing they're trying to do, and it is a tremendous amount of equipment, and it's something that will benefit probably like I said, 5 to 8 years worth of lacrosse players. And it's expensive. It's a cost that the district doesn't have to take on right now, and it's definitely something that can benefit us if we choose to accept it. I think you guys are talking about maybe looking at the process moving forward, but right now, I think it would benefit us to accept the donation.
So, did we not talk about doing it so that all of the donations went through the Booster Club and then came to us, and then that way the donator got
Yeah.
because the donator then would get a tax benefit from it. They won't get a tax benefit if they donate directly to the school. Is that correct?
No, that when we were talking, that was more about
The
fundraising.
fundraiser,
That
correct.
was that was fundraising. The policy that we implemented last year
Was the fundraising.
to go through the
Right.
established booster clubs was for fundraising.
So, but it wasn't for specific purchased items.
I think we talked about that in a separate Booster Club meeting from what I'm recalling. I don't even know if it was a Booster Club meeting. It was a whole bunch of mixed individuals.
Yeah, the fundraising policy we definitely revamped, and all the fundraisers do have to go through the school first for us to approve them, and then they have to go through the Booster Club, where the Booster Club accepts whatever money that was raised, and it keeps track of it per team, and that's just like the general Booster Club, not necessarily for a specific sport at times.
Because also, if somebody's donating equipment, it's not that they want to give the school $6,000. It's that they happen to have this equipment and they want to donate this specific equipment. And that's not going to, I think what you're suggesting is that if it were the money could be funneled to the Booster Club, and then the Booster Club could disseminate it in a more equal way or something. But I don't really think that's the case. I mean, people have equipment, they don't have
But this is
cash
all
that they
new
want to
equipment.
donate.
This is different. This is a purchase of equipment. That's how it was written in here.
I believe so, yes.
I don't think okay, I'll speak for myself. I have no issues with anybody giving to a specific program, whether it's equipment, whether it's money, whether it's right. We need to make a decision as to whether we're going to support that program. If somebody said, "I want to put in a helicopter pad," that's maybe something that we're like, well, we don't really want that money. But I'm just my concern is solely on the once we decide that this is a activity that we want to fund and we want to accept a donation of equipment, services, or even time, right, to do that. I just want to make sure that there's no, given the articles that have been kicking around in higher education in the past 2 weeks, that there's no, I gave all this money and now my child is able to do X. That's the wall I want, and I think that that's fairly straightforward to do.
And I think we have to trust our administrative team.
absolutely. Totally.
Yeah, and I think obviously it's an anonymous donation. If they had those ill intentions, I don't think it would be as obviously anonymous. I think they would this is who's donating, this is why I'm donating, and there's a reason behind it. I think it's coming from a great cause. Right. So.
Great.
So I apologize for speaking on behalf of the board. I clearly actually am much more ambivalent about accepting large private donations to public schools and the rest of the group. So I take that on me. And I certainly in no way meant to suggest that accepting the donation could represent any weird shenanigans on the part of our staff and faculty. I mean, not even in the slightest. I think I was speaking much more about my own concern.
And I think that's a good reminder too that, people donate their time all the time. And, we can't quantify that as much with a dollar amount, but if somebody's a volunteer coach, we don't sit here and say, oh, well, does that mean they're trying to get their kid on the team? Or, we just accept that it's their time and they're donating it for the benefit of their kid. I think the same applies to a financial donation. I think the same applies to an equipment donation, And I think we can trust our administrators to mitigate that.
Again, I think the concern was in the past was that we were not made aware that such donations were happening at this, and that's when we said, hey, we need to know, when it's a big ticket item especially. We really need to know about them all, and we kind of do. We just don't really speak about the smaller items. But if you look, there's smaller items here.
So that's a good point. So I think that the two potential watchouts are: we see a donation for a program that we don't know exists, right? That is making a programmatic decision that we're suddenly is because of the donation in and of itself. That so that would be a watch out, and we'd have questions for the administration like, do we really want to launch X? How does this fit in curriculum? And the second piece that we're entrusting the administration to do is we want to make sure that because of that, there's no malfeasance, right? Sure.
I'm looking really forward to the revision of the policy, Peggy and Jen.
The policy is actually really clear. I feel like this has been followed.
No, I think Jen's right. I mean, we don't. I mean, it sounds like they're. Yeah, it sounds like there's nothing actually to be put in place that the policies were followed, and that it's not there are no shortcomings on anybody's behalf. So thanks.
Margaret and John have some reservation. I think this should be brought up at a policy. I think we should further investigate.
Well, as part of the policy, it certainly would be a good practice just to review what's in place. But I also put it down as a discussion item for our retreat, tentatively, because it does. I don't think this will be the last time that we have perhaps have a large donation to the school.
Agreed.
So we should be really clear about how we're going to handle that.
Well, and we're talking about, yes, this is the policy, but when I went through very meticulously to see if I could find it, I can't find it. So
well,
we're
that's
talking about this
another
is
issue
what
that we're working
right.
on.
That's a separate issue.
Right.
We can't find many of the policies right now on our website, and
we are working on that.
You're working on that. We're aware.
So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
No
Thank
problem.
you to the donor. Thank you to you.
Yeah.
Thank you to,
Absolutely.
for trying to put this through the right way.
Sure.
I
there
always
are-
have these concerns. I've
Understood.
always had this concern. And again, yes, with what's going on in higher education right now, this is something that we need to be concerned about.
And it's
always.
all in the best interest of the district. It's
Agreed.
not,
Yes.
there's no ill intention. It's, again, we have to make sure, Ann passes her audits here.
But I'm the tough one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have
Thank
a
you for
good night.
coming back.
No problem.
I'm sorry the police officer scared you.
Okay.
So thank you for indulging me.
So we had discussion. I have all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. I lost track of where we were. Thanks, Julia. Consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Just one,
Mhm.
if I may. Just as the board will note that Mr. Wallach has submitted a letter of resignation. I just wanted to publicly thank Mr. Wallach for his service to the Haldane community. I think we've all found David to be a very warm presence for our students in and around the elementary school. To follow up, there will be a letter from me going home to parents tomorrow. Just bringing their attention to this if by chance they haven't heard or are not looking at our board agendas to indicate that this has occurred and to start to articulate what the process will be in the coming weeks and months, and there'll be more communications from me to families as the process unfolds for finding the next principal of Haldane Elementary School.
And I know I received his letter to parents. Was
Yes,
was
that's
that
correct.
school-wide?
I'm sorry. So Mr. Wallach did send a letter home yesterday, I
Yeah.
believe, to elementary families.
Oh, it was just elementary
families.
families.
I did
Okay.
put a notice out to all staff then, but I didn't feel it was appropriate, and this is, every district's a little different, but to put anything officially out to families until the board acts on
Sure.
his resignation. So
Great.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you to Mr. Wallach. I just had a quick question in regards to the approval to establish the standard work days. I know, Dr. Benante, you explained this to me in our Friday agenda sending meeting, but perhaps the board would benefit.
I'll turn it over to Ms. Dinio, who was working on that.
Sure. This pertains to the employees' retirement system. Some compliance, that there was a review. If you'll notice that all of the items or all of the positions that are on there are held by people that also hold full-time positions. So when this resolution passes, we send this to the employees' retirement system, and they know that whoever is in this gets full credit because of their other position. Okay, so for example, if we hired someone to be a purchasing agent and they came in a few hours a week, we would have to track their time for 3 months and submit it to employees' retirement system, and then they would establish a standard work day for that employee to determine how much credit they would get into the retirement system. Since staff are already getting 100% credit, if we just make this a blanket 7-hour day for each of these stipend positions, then we don't have to establish a work day for them because they're already getting as much as they can.
So it won't double them up. So say
won't
they
double them
hold
up.
3 of these titles, they'll get 7. But say someday we decide that the purchasing agent is only going to be a part-time person, that will give that person the 7.
If we had a separate person part-time to just be the purchasing agent, then we would have to track them and establish a standard work day. Maybe it's a 0.2 full-time equivalent, and that's how much credit they would get in the retirement system. But since the board would have to act on that.
At that point, if we did that.
So if all of these are secondary titles, why do we have to make a standard work day now?
It's a requirement from employees' retirement system.
Oh, they just need it.
They just need it. We're going
Got
to
it.
send this to them tomorrow, and they're going to close this. I don't like the word finding. It's not.
Close this
this
matter.
issue. This issue.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
Thank you for that explanation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unfinished business. Ms. Farmalaro, do you want to remind everyone?
Sure. This is just another reminder to the public that petitions are available, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, for Board of Education trustee seats. There are 2 seats available for terms commencing July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022. And the petitions are available in the district office, and they are due no later than 5 p.m. on April 22nd.
Thank you for that reminder. I did want to add one item here that's not on the list that Jen brought up a good suggestion that we board members try and join Dr. Benante and other administrators in the budget forums as well as the capital bond referendum walkthroughs. So if we can just maybe take a glance and see if that's a possibility for any of us. The dates for the budget forums would be March 22nd at 10 a.m., April 10th at 7 p.m., and then the budget, the capital referendum walkthroughs are April 12th at 3:15 and May 15th at 6:30. I can take the March 22nd at 10 if, oh,
What
were you
the other-
given?
No, what were the other?
More than one.
April 10th at 7 p.m. is the,
Oh, I'll do that one.
Budget.
I can do that one.
okay.
Is that the only evening one?
As of now, yes, Margaret. We were going to see what the response was in RSVP. If there was a desire to do more, we will schedule more.
There could be
'Cause
two
there could-
people.
I was going to
Right
say
now
there
they're
could
just
be
two
two.
scheduled.
But we can't do
We can't
three.
do 3 board members, but if
Oh, okay.
2 would
Yeah.
like,
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
There's also a evening walkthrough on the capital referendum project. That's May 15th at 6:30. And the other is April 12th at 3:15.
I'll do the April 12th at 3:15.
Okay.
And the first one was March 22nd, this Friday, right?
That's right, at
Yeah,
10.
yeah.
It's here.
We can have 2 people at
Yes.
them. And so, does that mean, so we have everything, do we need
Just
a?
the May 15th is still open at 6:30.
That's the capital project walkthrough. Walk around.
Wow, May? That's like years.
I know.
It's gonna be a
I might
warm
be able to do
evening.
May 15th.
It's gonna be a wonderful
Actually,
evening to walk our campus.
At 6:30?
Yes.
I actually already wrote that in my calendar, so
Oh.
in my head, I must have already thought I was going.
You're so ahead of yourself.
See? This
Sorry,
is,
Sarah.
it was meant to be.
Yeah, you know, Dr. Benante did a presentation of the budget at the PTA meeting last week, and it was so great for the parents. It was a small audience. I mean, there was maybe 8 to 10 people there, but it was all people who were engaged and who had good questions
Yes,
and who
very
had
good
questions
questions.
about how does it apply from last year to this year, and
Right.
they had follow-up questions, and I think it really helped. It helped me certainly like understand what people's questions may be who aren't looking at it all the time like we are. I think it helped Dr. Benante as well, and I think it really helped them knowing. I think they really appreciated knowing that I was literally my sole purpose in being there was hearing their questions, right, to see how they were responding to the budget. And I think that they really appreciated that. So I think it was like an all-around beneficial use of time.
I think we did some of that last year as well. We attended some of the PTA coffee, yeah.
talks, yeah.
So it's always a good idea if we can be present as well, so. April 10th,
It's in
7
this room?
p.m. in this room.
The walkthroughs, do they
Main
meet
building.
at the
We're starting at the district office, correct, Ann?
Main
Or the
building
lobby.
lobby.
We changed
Main
it to the
building
lobby, so
The
right
main building
upstairs.
lobby.
Yep.
And I just want to remind everybody, I believe you need to register for
We asked folks
the,
to RSVP to Jesse.
for both items or just the walkthrough?
For both,
Okay.
preferably. But we are anticipating some people may just show up. We'll put a reminder out for this week's tomorrow, and so there will be a reminder that goes out that week. So we'll be here, and if folks show up. But we do want to have an idea if we need to put more chairs out or not. That'd be a good problem to have.
Great, thank you. Dr. Benante, did you want to remind, I believe it's tomorrow night, about screenagers?
Yes, so I'm sorry I didn't mention this in my comments, and Julia had spoken to it probably a couple of weeks ago, but we do have a screening of the documentary Screenagers tomorrow evening here, and the time I have on my phone, I believe it's 6:30. Yes. So.
Tomorrow is March 20th at 6:30
March
p.m.
And that's part of our Friends and Family. No, I'm sorry.
Parent University.
It's
Oh,
Thursday.
Sorry, Thursday.
It's Thursday.
21st.
The 21st,
March
thank you.
21st.
Margaret. And it's part of our Friends and Family University, and we're looking forward to a good turnout for that event. The documentary has been shown elsewhere in the region, and it's received very good praise from parents and community members who've had the opportunity to view it, and really started a conversation around the use or the screen time in kids. So I'll be there. I know Ms. Sniffen will be there, and many members of our community.
Great.
I'm
Thank
hoping
you.
to be there on Thursday.
I'm sorry?
I'm hoping to be there
Great.
on Thursday.
Thank you, Deputy Shelters, for the reminder. Okay, any additional unfinished business? We're good? Okay, moving on to new business.
Okay, this is the CSE, CPSE recommendations, the recommended action. States, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the Committee on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as presented.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next is the secret resolution relating to the capital project. The recommended action states, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and the Board of Education, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the following secret resolution pertaining to the district facilities improvement program. This is a roll call vote.
I have a motion.
Motion. Second.
Okay. President Hammond?
I vote yes.
Vice President Daley?
Yes.
Trustee Clements?
Yes.
Trustee Headland?
Yes.
And Trustee Parr?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just a note on that particular item, we will be sending a thank you letter to the members of the Buildings and Grounds Committee tomorrow for their efforts really over the several years, but in helping bring that particular item to shape. And so I know we are very thankful for their time and volunteerism over the last couple of years in helping evaluate the needs that we have and putting something together that I think we can present to the community that would be supported. So.
Now that the bond is pretty formed,
Yeah.
Does the Buildings and Grounds, are they kind of on hiatus? Or
Yeah,
are they
for a
continuing
little-
to meet? Or?
Well, we will be meeting again before the end of the year. The timing of that meeting I haven't really established yet with Nabil and with Ann, but I do think that once we feel that the scope of this project is in a good place and it's been presented to the community, I think after these campus tours take place and we've checked in to get a sense for what the vibe is, there's a greater discussion to be had, and we don't want to waste any time in starting, at least at the B&G level, to think about how we want to engage our community in a discussion about other facilities projects, as you recall, that may have been discussed in the past, but we tabled to prioritize a certain level of certain projects now. We have to come back to those. We told our community we would, and so I need to check in with them and talk through how we're going to approach that over the next year.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, the next resolution is the approval of a resolution calling for the annual district meeting and the vote on the propositions and the trustee elections on May 21st. The recommended action states, be it resolved that upon the recommendations of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the following resolution calling for the annual district meeting and trustee election on May 21, 2019. This is also a roll call vote.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. President Hammond?
Yes.
Vice President Daley?
Yes.
Trustee Clements?
Yes.
Trustee Headland?
Yes.
And Trustee Parr?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any communication from the public? No? Okay, then I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
So quick.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.